think Andrew has the first demonstration for us. Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you, Bill. Let me just share my screen over here. Okay. All right, thanks, Bill. Yeah, I wanted to talk about a situation I had out at a client. It was an accounting client, and they were using some automated AI software supplied by a third party called ATO Mate. And what that software does is they receive accounting or tax files regularly, like your tax return, and those documents are automatically processed, and the AI picks up the information from the PDF documents and puts it into their system. So the request to me was, can we scan from the scanner or from the all-in-one Xerox printer scanner to a folder that the ATO Mate would pick up from? So what you would generally find with a printer is it gives you three options. One is to scan to SMB, which is probably what we've done in the past, scan to FTP, or scan to email. Now, one of the problems with the scan to SMB is that most printers, especially if they're 3 years or older, are using the SMB version 1 protocol. Now, as you can see on the graphic that I've got up there, there's quite a few different SMB protocols that have been released by Microsoft over the years. The SMB 1 goes back to Windows 2000. Now, on a security sense, that's a bad thing. And to open that up on a Windows 10 machine, you actually have to go into the settings. And if you've applied baseline policies to protect the machines, then you've got to start undoing that. You're really weakening your security posture by trying to achieve these goals. The same goes for the scan to FTP. So when I sort of realized, all right, I'm not going to use this scan to SMB, I'll go to FTP. Well, that didn't really work for me either, because I've got rid of the server. I've moved all of the files and documents and everything up into the Microsoft 365 cloud. So then do I then open and install FTP server on the Windows 10 or Windows 11 client, or do I go off and I get a third-party app such as FileZilla FTP, which a lot of people mentioned on the web? But once again, I then had to try and put holes in my security by opening up ports, modifying firewalls, and changing my Windows baselines to allow for these documents to be scanned in through the FTP. So then I thought, well, how can I do this using the Power Platform? And what I worked out was I could use the scan to email system on the printer to send the emails directly to a shared mailbox. And then I have the Power Platform pick up when or trigger automatically when an email is received into that scan, into the mailbox, into the shared mailbox, and then save that document directly into Sharepoint. Now, to send the emails from the printer, I use a product actually called SMTP to go to send it. The reason I do that is I also have closed down POP and SMTP on my Microsoft 365 for security purposes, and I can set up the SMTP to go quickly and easily. As you can see, there's a free version that allows you to send, I think it's a couple of hundred scans, which, you know, for small business, that's probably enough in a week or a month. And that's an easy way to set up the printer without touching any of your Microsoft 365 products. So let's have a look at how I do this. So first off, I've created here a shared mailbox called scanner@gallaghercomputing.com.au. I have then set up a Power Automate flow. which I'm now going to show you what it does. It's quite simple. There's only 4 or 5 steps in it. And basically what it does is it's checking the shared mailbox, scanner@gallaghercomputing.com.au, to receive an email. So whenever an email is received, in fact, I've actually done it. Whenever an email is received with, I could change that with an attachment. So if there was any emails received that didn't have an attachment, it wouldn't trigger the flow. But basically this in its set is just waiting for any email to be received into the scanner mailbox. Once it does that, I have this next step, which gets the email and basically gets the email ID. Now you may be wondering why this step is necessary. Without this step, I found that the PDF attachment came through and was saved into Sharepoint, but it was corrupted. So by adding this step and getting the message ID, it basically fixed the, and it's a known bug without, by using that. So this gets around that and saves it. The original mailbox address, scanner@Gallagher Computing, must be put in. The message ID on its own, it is not enough. You do need to actually put in the email address. So basically we're receiving our email, and then what we want to do is grab the attachments from those emails, from the email, and save that to a SharePoint location. So we've got our site address, and then we've got our folder path. So if you have a look here, you can see here, I've got a channel, Tony Scanned, which is also a document library. So in my flow, I'm choosing where I want the attachments from the email to be saved. So in the example for my client, ATO Mate had specified an input folder in SharePoint. So that was the folder path that I put in to save those documents. We're then gathering the file name and the content of the file and saving that to that SharePoint location. And then at the end, we no longer need the email, and the email is deleted out of the shared mailbox. So let's see this in action. Let me go back. So now what I'm going to do is, rather than get up and actually scan something, I'm just going to send this test email to the scanner mailbox. So I've just sent that, and I'm going to just have a look here where we expect to see this email come in very, very shortly. Let me just refresh this. And here's our email. It's just been received theoretically from the scanner. And now that email is in here, I'm going to come over here to watch our Power Automate flow. I'll just refresh this, and we should very shortly see a new flow start running. Now they aren't, they do kick off pretty quickly, but they're not always immediate. So I'm just going to keep refreshing this while it picks up the email. It's also important to note that you can actually see here the run history of previous emails that have come in. You can see early on, though, you know, my flow was failing, and then I got it to work. You can also click on one of the older ones and resubmit it. So, you know, if you're testing what's happening and so forth, you can resubmit an old flow. So let's come back here and let me refresh to see whether it kicks. Still waiting for it. As I say, it's not always instant. Box. Same, my email's disappeared. No, it's still. along. Okay, I'm going to, while we're waiting on that to take place, I'm actually going to submit this one just to kick one off. And okay, it's not kicking off because it's deleted. Okay, that one failed when I re-kicked the one off that I did last night because the email had been moved into the deleted items. Okay, this is. Let me run through. Okay, so here you can see that the email has arrived into the shared mailbox. It's got the email. It's created the file, the test PDF into the scanned documents. And then what it does is it deletes the file. I'm just going to refresh this one more time.
Andrew, it hasn't already appeared in the SharePoint, has it, as part of it?
Because the flow hasn't run. Let me refresh that. I'm just going to.
There you go. There's your test page.
So. Oh, there it is there. Okay, it took a little time. So as I say, the triggers aren't, instantaneous within a few minutes, let's say. So here is our flow that has run. Thank you, Yeoman. Yes, I was getting a little bit impatient. Has flowed. And if we have a look here, forget that one that I moved. That was the one I moved back. It deleted the original email. So as you can see, what it has done is run our flow, received the email, created the file with all of the information, and you will see that file if I refresh here in Teams. Here is our test page in our SharePoint document library because I'm looking all at the same thing. And even if I have a look here in my file system, here is the test page PDF that we've synced. So in conclusion, what I have done is basically I am now scanning from my Xerox printer directly into a SharePoint location. I haven't had to open up any firewalls. I haven't had to change any of my Microsoft 365 settings. So all of my security is completely in place and the email has scanned directly into the folder. You can also set up basically the scan to email, also to scan to people's personal email addresses and receive those attachments as normal in their inbox. Guys, do you have any other questions?
Andrew, I was just wondering, good demonstration. I was wondering if anyone's got any thoughts on how we could take this idea, because it's nice to have a secure way to do something, and perhaps expand on it within their own business or apply it to a specific setting that they're interested in. I'll just give you a few seconds for somebody else because I've got some ideas myself.
Sure. I find one of the easiest things to set up in those Xerox printers is the scan to email. You basically just have to give it the SMTP address and set up the users or the mailboxes in the address book, and away it goes. I've always had to muck around and fiddle with the SMB version of it and the FTP. And like I say, to get that to work, you actually have to weaken your networks and weaken your systems. So this way, generally, I sort of find, even though it did take a little bit of time there, by the time the person has hit the scan button on the printer and walked back to their desk, the email is sitting there waiting in the folder. And back to my customer's point in case, the ATO Mate software is also sitting there waiting for the scanned document to appear. And as soon as that appears, its processing goes off and takes place.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about, Andrew, is like I can see a lot of opportunities for the next step in the process to happen automatically. I can imagine if you're still receiving manual invoices with your deliveries or something like that, you could perhaps have some AI at the other end that's actually reading the invoices and inputting them sort of automatically for you, or some other kind of process like that. So the fact that you can kick it off and start an automation means it gives you the opportunity for the next step in the automation to happen as well.
100%. So basically in the automation here, I am putting it into a SharePoint library. We could potentially remove that step, create a new step, and run an AI action to filter through the PDF document, grab any information, and then either save that information to wherever you'd like, whether that be a SharePoint list, a Dataverse database, or even what Yeoman was showing us, the Power Automate desktop. You could then run one of them to manually put it into your CRM system through a website. Or if the website had an API connector, you could be putting the data directly into the database. But like I say, as the time these flows take can vary. It can vary on basically, I suppose, Microsoft's processing load. So, you know, I was expecting that to happen a little bit quicker than what it did. It did last night. Generally, you know, within a couple of minutes, the flows are automatically kicking off. You can manually try and kick some of the flows off. But in my case, where I've got it automatically deleting the emails, when I tried to rerun the flow, the email wasn't sitting there. Yeah, the email wasn't sitting there for it to find it. So,
Well,
yeah.
I found it a tendency where Power Automate is demigods and not usually friendly. And that when you actually not run it in a simulation, like you actually let it run for in real time in the production environment, it actually works so much better, because you're not trying to natively force things as you would do in a simulation like you just did with that. I mean, in my upcoming demo, I faced that exact same issue where you become a little impatient when you're trying to force a simulation, but when actually you just leave it to be triggered correctly in the production environment, then it does actually work quite well.
Yep. And as you can see here, when it actually did trigger, it actually took less than a second to process. But and what I'll just finish up on is that I'm sort of finding that external software vendors, printer manufacturers, scanner manufacturers, they're not worried about the security aspect of people's networks. So in another scenario where I'm trying to get a scanner to work in a Windows 10 environment that have got NDM connected, when I had a look at the old computer, basically it was running on Windows 7 and the firewall to get the scanning working had been completely turned off. Now, in my eyes and in Microsoft eyes, and I'm sure in a lot of other network administrators, that's just not acceptable. That's just opening up networks for ransomware attacks and weakening. But, you know, these third-party vendors, they're not worried about your network security. So it's something that you do need to be conscious of, and finding other ways. And the Power Platform is a great way to change the way we work, to change the way that we receive and accept documents. and maintain the security that we put into our networks. So anyway, thank you for listening. I'm now going to hand it over to Yeoman. Are you going to take the screen over, Yeoman?
I am. And
Cool.
while he's doing that, I'd just like to express how excited I am to actually try out this solution of yours. Andrew, I have too many small business environments with these older scanners and yes, exactly the same problem that you've now addressed in that it's just so much more exciting to create a Power Automate to remove a bugbear that I'm sure other managed service providers for small business clients have in terms of, well, we've got these old scanners. If it's anything that MSPs will tell you, scanning and printing are the two biggest bugbears they have to face when trying to solve problems for their clients, believe it or not.
And one thing that I find the client looks at a Xerox printer and they go, it's not old. It's still, you know, it still does everything we want it to do. But basically, you know, the BIOS in it or the software that the printer's using is very old, and the manufacturers have stopped updating that. So in the client's eyes, you know, it's just a scanner printer. Why do I need to go off and buy another one? So this way they don't, and all security is maintained.